someone's friend is a privilege that comes with a lot of influence that we have in someone else's life. How we choose our friends, what we say about our friends, and what we do for our friends has slowly been shaped by what our culture is pushing. Today we're going to quickly hear about what the Bible has to say about what it truly looks like to be a good friend. This leads to our THP for today's message, be a good friend. This THP sounds pretty simple. Everyone knows that they need to be a good friend and also thinks that they are a good friend. A good friend is made up of lots of things, and today I want us to look at just a few of these things by looking at the life of a man named Jonathan. Jonathan was a great friend. He was David's best friend. David was the future king of Israel and the one who defeated Goliath. When Jonathan met David, Jonathan's dad, Saul, was the acting first king of Israel. I want to look at the verses directly after the story of David defeating Goliath that we probably all know. Saul was shocked at what he'd just seen takes place and wants to know more about David, so he asks David to explain who he is. 1 Samuel 18, 1-4 reads, "As soon as he'd finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor and even his sword and his bow and his belt." When David has finished speaking, Jonathan feels an immediate connection to David. We all have probably felt that instant connection to someone when we just know that we'll be good friends. Jonathan instantly makes a commitment to David and goes to take off the very clothes on his body and gives them to him. So what brings Jonathan to do this? He's looking inward and not outward, and this brings us to our first quality of a good friend. A good friend looks inward. Jonathan and David could not be more different when looking at them from the outside, but when Jonathan heard David give an explanation of his heart, he saw his commitment to the Lord. Because Jonathan was so surrendered to the Lord's will, he saw that David was to be the next king of Israel and not himself. So he removes his robe and armor and gives them to David as a way to show that he's content with David taking the throne and that he wants to honor the Lord's choice. They loved each other more than the issue of who would take the throne because they loved the Lord more than the throne of Israel. What's holding you back from pursuing close friendship with someone? Is there someone in your life who's just too different? Or maybe you let envy keep you from being close friends with someone? What would it look like for us to look inward at our friends, to let the most important bond be that of our love for the Lord? As David becomes more popular, Saul's anger and envy grows towards him, but Jonathan's love and devotion remain steady. Let's see what happens next in 1 Samuel. "And Saul spoke to Jonathan his son, to all of his servants, that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan told David, 'Saul, my father, seeks to kill you. Therefore, be on your guard in the morning. Stay in a secret place and hide yourself, and I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak to my father about you. And if I learn anything, I will tell you.' And Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, 'Let not the king sin against his servant David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his deeds have brought good to you. For he took his life in his hand when he struck down the Philistine, and Lord worked a great salvation for all of Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood by killing David without cause?' Saul and his household were trying to find any offense against David to kill him, but Jonathan delighted much in David and did not let anything said against him change his opinion. He did more than just not engage in their conversations or plans to kill David, but he also helped David in the process. This leads to our second quality of a good friend, which says a good friend is loyal. Jonathan chose to believe and remain firm in what he knew to be true about David. He knew that David was pursuing the Lord and that his intentions were good and pure. It's always going to be easier to participate in what everyone around us is doing instead of bringing up a different opinion or standing up for our friends. Remember that as a follower of Christ, we're called to love those around us. Loyalty looks like investigating before assuming, investigating your thoughts, investigating the truth, and remembering your friend is not defined by what others may say about them, but instead who they are in their heart. The last part of Jonathan and David's friendship I want to look at is a moment where Jonathan takes a huge risk to sacrifice for and protect his friend. This leads to our last quality of a good friend sacrifices. Jonathan starts to recognize that for the sake of David's life, he may need to send David away, meaning he wouldn't see him again. They plan for David to hide in a field, and Jonathan will shoot arrows out in the field to tell David whether he needs to run away or that he's safe. The next couple nights at dinner, Saul realizes David's nowhere to be seen and gets angry. Let's look at what happens next. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said to him, "You son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you've chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on earth, neither you nor your kingdom shall be established. Therefore, send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die." Then Jonathan answered Saul his father, "Why should he be put to death? What has he done?" But Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him. So Jonathan knew that his father was determined to put David to death. Jonathan is making a huge sacrifice for David in this moment. He risks his relationship with his father and comes to the point of risking his own life because he trusts so fully in the Lord's plan for David's future. Sacrifice in our friendships may not look like this. It may look like putting aside our status or our image to do what's right. It may look like forgiveness. It can also look like putting our friend's need above our own and setting aside our desires for their best interests. Jonathan's heart was so submitted to the Lord that it bound him to David's in a special way. In order to be a good friend, the first question we need to ask ourselves is my heart submitted to the Lord? It's hard to truly embody these qualities if our heart isn't in the right place. We need to start there and then ask ourselves, which of these 3 areas do I need to grow better at? Do we need to be better at looking inward, staying loyal, or putting aside our pride to truly love our friends sacrificially? We need to begin to intentionally love those around us like Jonathan did. As we close, I'll leave you with our THP one more time. Be a good friend.
Hey there, thanks so much for checking out our YouTube channel. You're still here, so why not stay a while? Go ahead and drop a like and click that red button so you can enjoy some fresh new Northview Students content every single week. You don't want to miss a thing. We promise that you're going to be challenged, encouraged, and most importantly, inspired. So what are you waiting on, fam? Join us.